two things that can, in fact, be melded together?
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's this third Positive Economy Forum has decided to devote a session to culture, and art is a great part of culture. I think that's an excellent idea. Why do I think it's an excellent idea? Well, until today, especially in our country, Italy, culture has always been considered Cinderella. We've never really thought that culture could become the means for social development and nor for moral and spiritual progress. Let me clarify something. When we speak of culture, we need to distinguish between two notions of culture. Culture as cultural matrix, the collection of traditions, customs, uses, which are transmitted from one generation to the next, and culture as cultural capital. Now, that first meaning of culture is included when we speak about youth culture, when we talk about feminist culture, when we talk about corporate culture. We're talking about that first sense of the culture, and this is accepted, an accepted use. But what is not yet fully understood is the second meaning, because culture is also cultural capital. Now, if it is cultural capital, it needs investments. All capital needs investments. Capital is not a natural resource that already exists. It requires investment. But we still have this idea of culture as something like oil. It's like a mine that exists, and all you have to do is extract it and benefit from it in some way or another. This is a terrible mistake. It's a conceptual error, because cultural capital needs to be generated. It needs to be built up. It is not pre-existing. From this point of view, cultural capital must not be confused with cultural heritage. Cultural heritage are an inheritance from the past. The capital is something different from your inheritance, isn't it? So what's the reason that prevents us from appreciating the strategic meaning of culture as cultural capital? Access to it, how to enjoy it, how to benefit from it. In order to appreciate certain cultural products, arts, music, theater, the list is long, in order to really benefit from it, you need to set in motion certain processes that can reduce the setup costs, the activation costs, because cultural benefit and enjoyment is not immediate. You need to prepare the ground for this. This is like enjoying sport. Now, if I'm going to participate in a race, I need to train, and during my training, I will have costs. Now, if these costs are excessively high, I will not participate in a sporting activity, and someone will say, you're not interested in sport, or you're lazy. That's the same thing that's happening with the enjoyment of cultural capital. If we do not intervene in order to reduce the costs, or in order to ensure that anyone can participate by helping them pay the costs, culture will be enjoyed only by an elite. And the media will describe culture as something that the majority of young people are not interested in enjoying. That's not true at all. Now, we have experiments that show us the exact opposite. The fact is that if we do not remove those setup costs, those activation costs, these cultural capital assets will not be enjoyable by all. So the question is, who should get moving in order to ensure that everybody has access to the enjoyment of culture? Because only when everybody has access will there be enjoyment. We're talking now about the fact that in America they have a lot of money to invest in resources. They have demonstrated after an experiment, that the psychophysical well-being of a person benefits more from culture than it does from income. Of course, health is the most important element, but after health, there is the enjoyment of cultural products to improve the welfare, the psychosocial well-being of people. So this will not come exclusively from increasing their income. Income is, of course, necessary, but enjoyment of cultural assets helps the psychosocial well-being of people more so than an increase in income. So looking at it from this point of view, this is really interesting. So the question is, how do we lower the setup costs, the initiation costs? The answer that somebody could give is, well, it's the role of the state. The state, of course, does have a role, but it can't be the only one. We've got to mobilize organized civil society so that organized civil society can find the right forms for investing in the setup of capital assets. In the previous roundtable, Under-Secretary Bobba mentioned the reform of the third sector, which has finally been completed. This reform opens up new prospects in this, from this point of view as well, because you can't think of this only from traditional points of view, the reform of the third sector, but we must also achieve a creation of social enterprise, which is a non-profit making, but it is part of the private sector of our economy, and it is something new in our society, just like benefit corporations in the US are something different. And you know that Italy was the second country in the world after the US that introduced a law last December of benefit companies. That's what they were christened in the stability law last year. It has two goals, that kind of enterprise, and it's got to be included in the Articles of Association. It must have a profit that it pursues as a goal, because the shareholders must be rewarded, but it also have social utility creation, and one of these will be the enjoyment of cultural capital. So we envisage or expect, currently there are only 20 of these enterprises that have been certified as benefit companies. The law was only approved 3.5 months ago, so it's all right that there's still only 20, but there got to be more that have got to be incorporated. And we've got to think that the goal needs to be participated, everybody needs to participate in this goal. Anyone who believes in the principle of subsidiarity should know what I'm talking about. Now, we've got to define cultural added value. We all know what social added value is, and the movement of ideas in the Western world that was born around the social added value has actually created those new evaluation methods that are called social impact, evaluation of the social impact of an initiative, of an investment, and so on. I think the same thing must be done on the front of cultures. We've got to find a measurement capable of measuring the cultural added value. Unless we do this, there will always be those who underestimate the strategic importance of cultural capital. I believe that we're well on the way to achieving this goal, but we do need the proper measurement tools. We can't apply the same measurements that we use for other purposes. It will take a lot of studying, a lot of research, and that's why research centers in universities will be involved in this. We've got to take back the strategic function of culture as cultural capital for our society, not because it has an impact on the economic dimension, of course, and we're a little bit superficial in this. cultural heritage, of course, useful in tourism, but we can't reduce the role of culture merely to tourism, because the psychological well-being of our citizens benefits from the enjoyment of our cultural capital, and it also promotes social cohesion. And when social cohesion is increasing in a country, our social capital and our cultural capital are also increasing. Thank you.